The tragedy of Selinunte. Selinunte, the Latin name Selinus, was an ancient Greek city on the south coast of Sicily, near Castelvetrano. It is famous for its ruined Doric temples. Selinunte originally was one of the largest and most beautiful ancient Greek cities in all of Europe. It got its name from the wild celery that grows locally, named Selenon. Wealth and commerce enabled Selinus to build its splendid temples, but Selinunte's fame, trade, and wealth made it the second city of Greek Sicily after Syracuse. Unfortunately, it was this fame and wealth that would draw the envious attention of Carthage, and this would ultimately lead to the ruin of the city. In 628 BC, Greek colonists from Megara Hyblaea on the eastern side of Sicily chose the site around the Manuzza hill as it benefited from a natural port and was also surrounded by fertile land which was suitable for agriculture, for example wheat and olives. Selinunte was the most westerly Greek colony in Sicily. Initially, the people of Selinunte coexisted peacefully with the Phoenicians settled in western Sicily and the native Sicilians to the north. The site was planned on the Manuzza plain across 20 acres. The city was completely redesigned between 580 BC and 570 BC. Selinus is a stunning example of ancient town planning, where the city had been specifically designed and built. Approximately 580 BC, the people of Selinunte were at war with the Elemi, the people of Segesta. There would continue to be regular hostilities between Segesta and Selinunte in the future, and this would end badly for both cities. Selinunte enjoyed power and wealth, but very little of its history appears to have survived. An example of the city's wealth was the fact that there was a theatre and also a mint producing coins displaying symbols of the city. The stone used for the buildings of Selinunte were quarried at Cusa, near Campobello di Mazara. Around 510 BC, Selinunte was ruled by a tyrant, Pythagoras, who was overthrown by the Spartan Euryleon, a companion of Dorius. Euryleon's rule was short. He was overthrown and executed by the people of Selinunte. The city of Selinus remained neutral in the war of 480 BC. They chose not to side with the fellow Greeks in Agrigento and Syracuse. During the battle, the Greeks of Agrigento and Syracuse decisively beat the Carthaginians at Himera. This act of neutrality by Selinunte spectacularly backfired in the long term. While it did appease the Carthaginians in the short term, in the long term it proved to be a big mistake. Selinunte joined a Syracuse uprising in 466 BC to help expel Thrasybulus. In 444 BC, the surrounding marshland was drained by Empedocles, the famed scientist and philosopher from Agrigento, and this greatly improved the health of the citizens by reducing disease. Thucydides described Selinunte in 416 BC as a powerful, wealthy city with many resources and wealth piled in its temples. Diodorus describes Selinunte at the time of the Carthaginian invasion as heavily populated and having been undisturbed by other cities. The population is estimated at between 14 and 19,000 during the 5th century BC. The walls of Selinunte enclose an area of approximately 100 hectares or 250 acres. In 416 BC, hostilities resumed between Selinunte and Segesta. Selinunte asked Syracuse for support and initially held up forces from Segesta. However, Segestans quickly sought help from Athens. A large Athenian group set sail for Sicily to punish the cities which had sided with Syracuse against Greece. The Athenians landed in Sicily in 415 BC, but quickly began to argue on their priorities. The Athenians finally decided to attack Syracuse, and Selinunte was spared. The defeat of the Athenian troops at Syracuse left Segesta heavily outnumbered. Segesta promptly surrendered the land, which was the cause of the original dispute with Selinunte. Selinunte refused this offer and pushed for a much harder bargain. Forces of Selinunte continued to attack Segesta, causing the latter to seek urgent support from Carthage. Carthage slowly and reluctantly sent a small contingent of troops, which, allied with Segesta, defeated Selinunte in a battle. In this period, Selinunte, Agrigento and Syracuse had fought off the Greek invasion, but at a very high price, something that was noticed by Carthage. The Carthaginians used the excuse of a minor border skirmish between Selinunte and the enemy of Segesta to launch a full-blown attack on Selinunte in 409 BC. Carthaginians sent a large army of possibly 100,000 men, led by Hannibal Mago, a descendant of Hamilcar who had lost at Himera, and they brought battering rams and siege towers with them. The army landed at Lilybaeum, now Marsala, and moved directly to Selinunte. The people of Selinunte were stunned, unprepared and overwhelmed. Over time, the city fortifications had fallen into disrepair. The support promised by Syracuse, Acrogas, which was Agrigento, and Gela arrived far too late. The people of Selinunte desperately fought the Carthaginians, even resisting from house to house, but were no match for the invading army. After a brief 10-day siege, Selinunte had fallen. Its soldiers perished, 16,000 died, 5,000 were enslaved, and 2,000 fled with Empedion to Acrogas, which is Agrigento. Selinunte was brutally sacked by the forces of Carthage, a horrific act of destruction, torture, rape, murder and looting. This massacre ended Selinunte's finest days. The city was repopulated by the Carthaginians, but would never recapture its former glory. The Carthaginians rebuilt the area of the former Acropolis, leaving a mixture of architectural styles, both Punic and Greek. Hermocrates, exiled from Syracuse, later gathered the survivors to re-establish on the site of Selinunte in the area of the former Acropolis. The city slowly returned. Hannibal returned to destroy the city walls, but permitted the survivors to remain as tributaries of Carthage. A treaty was agreed in 405 BC between Dionysius of Syracuse and the Carthaginians. Selinunte supported Dionysius during his war with Carthage in 397 BC. Selinunte was awarded to Carthage as part of a peace deal in 383 BC. While Dionysius returned to reconquer Selinunte, he soon died, after which Carthage resumed control of the city. Under Carthaginian rule, the Acropolis of Selinunte was fortified, and a number of buildings were dedicated to the worship of Punic gods such as Tanit and Baal-Hamon. The Halykos River was considered the eastern border of the Carthaginian territory in Sicily by the Treaty of 383 BC, despite the occasional border skirmish. It remained the border under the treaty with Agathocles in 314 BC. This restated that Selinunte, Heraclea and Himera remained under the control of Carthage. In 296 BC, Pyrrhus entered Sicily, and Selinunte rushed to join him after the capture of Heraclea. During the First Punic War, Selinunte was ruled by Carthage, and its lands were the theatre of war between the Romans and the Carthaginian forces. As the war drew to a close in 250 BC, Carthaginian forces withdrew and forced the inhabitants of Selinunte to move to Lilybaeum, which is Marsala. Carthaginian forces fled the advancing Roman troops, who were moving on to Panormus, which was Palermo, but maliciously destroyed Selinunte to ensure it did not fall into Roman hands as a prize. Selinunte was never properly rebuilt until recent archaeological excavations. Pliny the Elder mentions Selinus. Strabo specifically described it as a dead city. Ptolemy refers to the river Selinus, but not the town. Around 700 AD, a small Byzantine Greek village re-emerged amongst the ruins of Selinunte. A serious earthquake destroyed that village and caused further destruction of the ancient Selinunte site in the 9th century AD. Recent studies suggested that this area was inhabited in the 9th and 11th century AD by Arabs. The site of Selinus was forgotten, destroyed, and abandoned until it was rediscovered in the 16th century. The Tower of Pollux, including an ancient tower or lighthouse, was constructed at the entrance of the Acropolis in the 16th century to protect against Barbary pirates. After that, it lay abandoned again until English archaeologists began the work of excavation in the 19th century, and this work continues to today. The walls surrounding the Acropolis were rebuilt by archaeologists in 1927. The ruins of 5 temples surround the fortified Acropolis, while the remains of 3 more ruined temples bearing massive Doric columns lie on the hill east of Selinus. The Temple of Hera was re-erected in the 1950s. In 2012, a temple dedicated to Demeter was discovered. Modern Selinunte is an archaeological park, the largest in Europe, and a nature reserve, Belice Nature Reserve. Sculptures from the archaeological park are kept at the National Archaeological Museum of Palermo and the Museum of Castelvetrano.